Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And thanks for joining us today. We have a brand new story to share with you. So let's get started. I never expected that a simple dinner invitation could shake the very foundation of my life. At 55, I had settled into a predictable rhythm. Early mornings spent tending to my garden, afternoons lost in historical novels, and quiet evenings beside James, my husband of 30 years. Our marriage had been built on routine, comfort, and a silent understanding that passion wasn't something we needed anymore. But that night, something shifted, something subtle yet powerful, something that awakened a part of me I had long forgotten. The dinner was hosted by Ethan and Charlotte, a couple James had known for years through work. Their home was a picture of effortless elegance. Warm candlelight flickered across the mahogany table. The scent of rosemary and roasted garlic filled the air, and soft jazz played in the background, setting the perfect atmosphere. As we settled into the evening, I found myself across from Ethan, a man I had always regarded as James's friendly and charismatic colleague. He was charming in a way that put people at ease, effortlessly drawing others into conversation, his deep laughter carrying across the room like an invitation to let your guard down. At first, our conversation was light: books, travel, the beauty of a well-maintained garden. But then, somewhere between the first glass of wine and the delicate spoonful of creme brulee, the air between us changed. Ethan turned to me, his gaze holding mine just a little too long, a quiet curiosity in his eyes. "Caroline," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear, "do you ever feel like life just settled into place without asking if you were ready?" The question sent a shiver down my spine. For a brief moment, I felt completely exposed, as if he had somehow seen through the polished exterior I had carefully crafted over the years. I hesitated before answering, my heart unexpectedly pounding. "I suppose that's part of growing older," I replied, forcing a smile. "We build something stable, something safe." He nodded, but didn't look convinced. "But safe doesn't always mean fulfilled, does it?" I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. I glanced toward James, who was lost in conversation with Charlotte, utterly unaware of the moment unfolding between Ethan and me. Something inside me whispered that this was dangerous, that I was playing with fire, but another part, a part I had ignored for years, ached at the idea that someone, for the first time in a long time, had truly seen me. And in that moment, I knew this was only the beginning. The evening had ended, but something about it refused to fade. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, while James slept soundly beside me, his breathing slow and steady. I should have been able to do the same, to slip into the same undisturbed sleep I had for years, but I couldn't. Ethan's words echoed in my mind. Safe doesn't always mean fulfilled, does it? They had settled into my bones like an unanswered question, one that made my heart beat just a little too fast. The next morning, I tried to brush it off as nothing. It was just dinner, just an ordinary conversation, and Ethan had been nothing more than his usual charming self. But deep down, I knew better. There had been something in his gaze, in the way his voice had lowered when he spoke to me, something that made my stomach tighten in a way I hadn't felt in years. I convinced myself that once the night faded into the past, so would this feeling, this strange, unsettling restlessness. But fate had other plans. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon when my phone buzzed with an unexpected message. I glanced at the screen, my heart skipping a beat. Ethan, it was good seeing you the other night, Caroline. I can't stop thinking about our conversation. Would love to continue it sometime. I stared at the message, my pulse hammering in my ears. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend I hadn't seen it and move on with my day, as if nothing had happened. But another part of me, the part that had been shaken awake that night at dinner, lingered over his words, would love to continue it sometime. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Every logical thought in my mind screamed at me to leave it alone, to pretend this never happened. But my hands betrayed me. It was good seeing you too, Ethan. I'm not sure continuing the conversation is a good idea. I hit send, my chest tightening with a strange mixture of relief and regret. Within moments, my phone buzzed again. Ethan. Understood. But just so you know, sometimes the conversations we're afraid to have are the ones we need the most. I set my phone down, exhaling shakily. He wasn't pushing, wasn't demanding, but his words carried a weight that unsettled me. And despite my best efforts, I couldn't deny it. Ethan had gotten under my skin, and I wasn't sure how to make him leave. Days passed, but the message lingered. I told myself I had done the right thing, setting a boundary, making it clear that whatever Ethan was feeling, whatever I was feeling, couldn't go any further. But the problem wasn't just Ethan. The problem was me. The way my heart raced when I saw his name on my phone. The way I caught myself staring too long at nothing, lost in thoughts I shouldn't be having. It wasn't about Ethan, not really. It was about what he had made me realize. That Saturday, James and I went to dinner at our usual spot, a quiet little Italian place we had frequented for years. The conversation was pleasant, predictable, the way it always was. We talked about the neighbor's new fence, a minor inconvenience at the grocery store, and our plans for the weekend. James was kind, attentive in his way, but something about the night felt different. Or maybe it was me who felt different. At one point, as I reached for my wine glass, I caught my reflection in the window next to us. The woman staring back at me looked the same, but something in her eyes had changed. I used to feel grateful for these dinners, for this life we had built together. But now, I felt like a guest in my own marriage, watching from the outside, smiling at the right moments, saying the right things, but feeling nothing. James noticed my quiet mood on the drive home. "You okay?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." He didn't press, didn't pry. He simply nodded and kept driving. And that, more than anything, made my heart ache. Shouldn't he notice more? Shouldn't he feel that something was off? Later that night, as I lay awake again, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. My breath hitched as I reached for it. A message from Ethan. "Ethan, I know I should probably leave this alone, but I can't. I see you, Caroline, and I don't think you've been seen in a long time." Tears burned in my eyes as I read the words, my hands trembling slightly. I should delete the message. I should put my phone down, roll over, and go to sleep next to the man who had been my world for decades. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at the screen, my heart hammering in my chest, realizing that no matter how much I tried to ignore it, something inside me had already changed. I didn't reply to Ethan's message, not that night, not the next day, but I also didn't delete it. Instead, It sat there, glowing on my screen like an unspoken truth, one that I wasn't ready to confront. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was reading too much into something fleeting, something meaningless. And yet, the way my breath hitched whenever I thought of his words, the way my fingers hovered over my phone, told me that I was lying to myself. James left for work early Monday morning, pressing a quick kiss to my forehead before heading out the door. It was a familiar routine, comforting in its predictability, but for the first time, I felt an ache, a deep, unsettling sadness that I couldn't explain. I had spent decades in this life, in this marriage, and yet it wasn't until now that I realized how much of myself I had lost. The thought followed me as I went about my day, through the grocery store aisles, through my afternoon walk, through the quiet solitude of my kitchen as I made dinner. My hands moved automatically, chopping, stirring, seasoning. But my mind was somewhere else, with him, with the way his eyes held mine across the room, with the way his words settled into my bones, refusing to leave. And then, as if the universe had sensed my weakness, my phone buzzed again. Ethan, I didn't mean to make things harder for you. I can't stop thinking about you. And I think maybe you can't stop thinking about me either. I gripped the counter, my breath coming faster now. I should ignore it. I should block his number. I should delete the message and pretend that I never saw it. But instead I typed back, me. You have no idea how complicated this is. His reply came almost instantly. Ethan, then let's make it simple. Meet me. Just once. No expectations. Just talk to me. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment where I had to make a choice. The safe choice would be to say no, to let this moment pass, to bury whatever this was before it became something I couldn't control. But a deeper part of me, the part that had been neglected for far too long, was screaming for something else. And before I could stop myself, before I could let reason take over, I typed a single word. Me. Okay. The cafe was small, tucked away on a quiet street where no one I knew would stumble upon me. I had chosen it for that very reason, for the secrecy it provided. My hands trembled slightly as I wrapped them around my coffee cup, the warmth doing little to calm the storm raging inside me. What was I doing here? What did I expect from this? Then the door opened, and there he was, Ethan. He spotted me immediately, his lips curling into that slow, knowing smile that had been haunting my thoughts for days. My breath hitched, and for a fleeting second, I considered bolting, running away before this moment could become something I couldn't take back. But then he was in front of me, sliding into the seat across from mine, his eyes locked onto me in a way that made it impossible to move. You came, he said, his voice smooth, yet filled with something deeper, something unspoken. I swallowed hard, nodding. I shouldn't have. His expression softened. But you did. Silence stretched between us, thick with tension, with possibilities neither of us dared to name. Outside, the world carried on as usual. Cars passing, people laughing, life moving forward. But inside this cafe, time felt frozen. I'm not sure what you want from me, I admitted finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan leaned forward, his gaze never leaving mine. I don't want anything from you, Olivia. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair, frustrated. I just needed to see you, to know that I wasn't imagining this. This? I repeated, my heart pounding. He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that when you look at me, you feel nothing, and I swear I'll never bother you again." His words hung in the air, a challenge and a plea wrapped in one. My throat tightened. I should lie. I wanted to lie. It would be easier, but I couldn't. Ethan saw the truth in my silence, and his expression shifted, his hand reaching across the table, fingertips brushing against mine. The contact was light, barely there, but it sent a jolt through me, awakening something that had been dormant for far too long. "Olivia," he murmured, his voice thick with meaning. "I should have pulled away. I didn't."
I pulled my hand back, as if I had been burned, my pulse pounding so loudly I was sure Ethan could hear it. This had gone too far. I wasn't that woman, the kind who toyed with temptation, who risked everything for the thrill of a fleeting moment. I had spent my entire life building something solid with James, a marriage built on trust, companionship, and the quiet understanding that comes after years of shared experiences. And yet, sitting here with Ethan, feeling the heat of his gaze, the way his presence made my body hum with awareness, I couldn't ignore the ache deep inside me, the realization that something in my life had been missing for a long time. "I can't do this," I whispered, gripping the edge of the table as if it could anchor me back to reality. "I won't do this," Ethan exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. "I know," he said, though there was a flicker of something, hurt, disappointment, in his expression. "I never wanted to make things complicated for you, Olivia." He leaned back, raking a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "But tell me one thing." I swallowed, my mouth dry. "What?" His voice dropped, low and edged with something raw. "Are you happy?" The question was a wrecking ball to the fragile walls I had built around myself. Happy. The word felt foreign, like something from another lifetime. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What was I supposed to say? That James was a good man? That I loved him in the way you love an old song? Familiar, comforting, but no longer stirring anything deep inside? That somewhere along the way, we had become partners in life, rather than lovers? Ethan watched me, waiting, but my silence was answer enough. His eyes darkened, not with victory, but with understanding. "You deserve to feel alive," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "I see you, Olivia. I see the way you shrink yourself, the way you smile, but your eyes never quite light up. You don't have to live like that." Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. "I love my husband," I whispered, half to convince him, half to convince myself. Ethan nodded, but there was sadness in his smile. "And yet, here you are." The words sliced through me because they weren't an accusation. They were the truth, and for the first time I wasn't sure what to do with it. The days after my conversation with Ethan felt like I was walking on a tightrope, teetering dangerously between guilt and longing. I told myself it was just a fleeting moment, that I had put it behind me. And yet, I couldn't shake the way his words had pierced through me, like tiny cracks forming in a foundation I once believed was unbreakable. Every time James smiled at me over breakfast or reached for my hand absent-mindedly while watching television, I felt the weight of my secret pressing down on me. I loved my husband, at least I thought I did. But Ethan had forced me to confront something I had spent years ignoring. Was I truly happy, or had I simply become accustomed to the life I had built? It wasn't until the following weekend that everything came crashing down. Mark and I had been invited to an office gala, one of those stiff, formal events filled with polite conversations and forced laughter. I wore my best navy blue gown, my hair pinned back in soft curls, playing the role of the devoted wife effortlessly. But as soon as we stepped inside the grand ballroom, my breath hitched. Ethan was there. He was standing near the bar, a drink in hand, looking devastatingly handsome in his tailored black suit. And when his eyes met mine from across the room, the entire world seemed to fall away. I forced myself to look away, gripping James's arm a little tighter, as if that alone could keep me from unraveling. The night was a blur of introductions and conversations, but I was barely present. My heart pounded every time I felt Ethan's gaze on me, the unspoken tension between us suffocating. It wasn't until later in the evening, when James excused himself to discuss a work matter, that I found myself alone, only to turn and find Ethan standing mere inches away. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the hum of the crowd. I swallowed hard. "Ethan, please—" "I know." He cut me off gently, his eyes searching mine. I just needed to say it. One last time. My breath hitched, my resolve crumbling. "Why does this feel like it's more than just a passing moment?" I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "Because it is." The honesty in his voice, the raw emotion in his eyes made my stomach tighten. I had spent so long pretending, burying my own needs beneath responsibility and routine. And yet, here he was, standing before me, seeing me in a way I hadn't been seen in years. Before I could respond, James's voice called out my name from across the room. I turned quickly, my heart racing, and when I looked back, Ethan was already walking away, disappearing into the crowd. But something inside me knew this wasn't over, and whether I liked it or not, I had a choice to make.
The days after my conversation with Ethan felt like I was walking on a tightrope, teetering dangerously between guilt and longing. I told myself it was just a fleeting moment, that I had put it behind me, and yet I couldn't shake the way his words had pierced through me, like tiny cracks forming in a foundation I once believed was unbreakable. Every time James smiled at me over breakfast or reached for my hand absent-mindedly while watching television, I felt the weight of my secret pressing down on me. I loved my husband, at least I thought I did, but Ethan had forced me to confront something I had spent years ignoring. Was I truly happy, or had I simply become accustomed to the life I had built? It wasn't until the following weekend that everything came crashing down. Mark and I had been invited to an office gala, one of those stiff, formal events filled with polite conversations and forced laughter. I wore my best navy blue gown, my hair pinned back in soft curls, playing the role of the devoted wife effortlessly. But as soon as we stepped inside the grand ballroom, my breath hitched. Ethan was there. He was standing near the bar, a drink in hand, looking devastatingly handsome in his tailored black suit. And when his eyes met mine from across the room, the entire world seemed to fall away. I forced myself to look away, gripping James' arm a little tighter, as if that alone could keep me from unraveling. The night was a blur of introductions and conversations, but I was barely present. My heart pounded every time I felt Ethan's gaze on me, the unspoken tension between us suffocating. It wasn't until later in the evening, when James excused himself to discuss a work matter, that I found myself alone, only to turn and find Ethan standing mere inches away. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the hum of the crowd. I swallowed hard. "Ethan, please." "I know," he cut me off gently, his eyes searching mine. I just needed to say it one last time. My breath hitched, my resolve crumbling. "Why does this feel like it's more than just a passing moment?" I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "Because it is." The honesty in his voice, the raw emotion in his eyes, made my stomach tighten. I had spent so long pretending, burying my own needs beneath responsibility and routine. And yet, here he was, standing before me, seeing me in a way I hadn't been seen in years. Before I could respond, James's voice called out my name from across the room. I turned quickly, my heart racing, and when I looked back, Ethan was already walking away, disappearing into the crowd. but something inside me knew this wasn't over. And whether I liked it or not, I had a choice to make. In life, some of the most powerful moments are the ones we never see coming, the quiet whispers that stir forgotten parts of us, the unexpected encounters that challenge what we thought we knew. My journey isn't just about love or temptation, it's about rediscovery, about learning that even after decades of routine, we are still evolving, still capable of deep emotion, new connection, and self-reflection. Whether we choose to stay, to leave, or to simply pause, what matters most is that we do so with honesty, with ourselves, and with those we care about. If this story resonated with you, stirred something inside you, or made you reflect on your own journey, please don't forget to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts or experiences, and subscribe to our channel, Heartfelt Tales Reddit, for more deeply moving, emotionally rich stories just like this one. Your support helps us share stories that speak to the heart and remind us all that life, no matter our age, is still full of unexpected turns and profound choices. And trust me, this story isn't over yet. There's so much more to come. Stay tuned.